After prolonged 2 years of COVID-19, Ambuja Neotia is back with the 5th edition of Charles Correa Annual Memorial Lecture 2022. The event will witness the international architect C. Anjalendran from Colombo, Sri Lanka and Professor K.T. Ravindran from New Delhi, who will share insight around architecture trends.
And request Mr. Lanka to kindly facilitate Mr. Anjalendran. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Anjalendran. He's come all the way from Sri Lanka. We hope this will be a wonderful evening that we'll have both of them together. Thank you so much. Gentlemen, please, if you can take.
Correa aimed to elevate architecture from the mundane to the sacred by scripting spatial narratives that made the user or the visitor an integral part of the man-environment amalgams that he successfully created. Correa started as a protagonist, inspired his peers and contemporaries, and unleashed a new syntax in spatial planning. Correa and Geoffrey Bauer share similar principles. I mentioned Bauer because we have our guest lecturer.
Architecture is not a subject that I have learned, but somehow I had the privilege of growing up in a family that was involved, or rather patrons of, supporters of art in various forms. Mostly art as in visual art, music, literature, philosophy. I don't know how, serendipitously, I accidentally got involved with real estate construction. That was absolutely accidental. Many people think that I chose this as a business, but that was not so. I just happened to be around when my father introduced me to a friend of his who had a piece of land, and I was asked if I could help in building that. I was 22 years old. I knew nothing about architecture. So I started the project just like an entrepreneur. But in the course of building it, I came across some amazing architects. I have to acknowledge that my learning here began with Mr. Ashok Naik, architect Ashok Naik. He was the first architect that I met in that real sense, in an intimate sense, I would say. And he took me under his wings and shared over hundreds of hours various thoughts. Then many colleagues, Parfuta, Ashish included, we worked together in an organization that we set up to design some of the projects that we were working on. My friend Raja Kundu, who is now in the US. So they became influences. Then early on I got introduced to Dulalda, to Probirda, most importantly. And Probirda became a very, very close mentor. I got less firing from my father and more firing from Probirda. Those of you who know him know that he had this loving temperament and at the same time a temper. And whenever I kind of did something stupid, or he thought it was stupid, there was a volley of filing that I got. But anyway, that was wonderful because what I learned at his under his tutelage. And then a big change happened when I got the opportunity to work with Balkishan Doshi. And Balkishan Doshi ji not only was an architect to me, but he actually became like a father to me. He lived in our home whenever he visited Kolkata, and he would wake up very early in the morning and he would summon me, and there would be hundreds of hours of talk. Very, very varied, not just about the work that we were doing, but more about life. And that relationship, which started in the mid-90s, which is now about 27 years ago, almost 30 years actually, 93, 94, continues till this day. Every 3 months, 4 months, to take my dose of learning, I make my trip to Ahmedabad and spend a very 3-4 hour long afternoon with him, listening to him, absorbing him, and it's been a life transforming act. And then of course I got the opportunity to work with the very famous Mr. Charles Correa. And I have shared this before, it was a khatta meetha kind of a ride. Lots of fights. Fights means that I could fight with him, one-way fights. But again, he brought a masterpiece to Kolkata, which I remain ever grateful for. And to see a master so closely at work was a fascinating experience. So this journey has really brought me close to architecture. I have not been taught architecture, but somehow with the influences that came around me, I feel very close, and if I had another vocation at all in my life, I would love to be an architect. Thank you very much.
Mukherjee to come on stage.
The person has also been a long-standing collaborator of Charles Correa in various capacities and fora, both national and international. He is a member, governing council, chairman of the Architectural Heritage Advisory Committee, convener, Delhi chapter intact. He is a trustee, the Madhavan Nair Foundation, Kochi. He was a member of the advisory board of the United Nations Capital Master Plan, New York. He was the consultant to the President of India, consultant to UNESCO. He was Dean and Senior Academic Advisor, Rick's School of Built Environment for 7 long years. He was founding president of the IUDI, which is Institute of Urban Designers India, the former chairman, Delhi Urban Earth Commission, and has been a member of many such committees dealing with urban conservation, smart city, public open spaces, overall the sustainability and inclusivity of urban dwelling. His most recent work was the preparation of resilient urban design framework for low-income state housing in Tamil Nadu for the World Bank. With an experience of over 54 years, his current practice includes design of greenfield cities, cultural buildings, memorials, adaptive reuse, urban conservation. He has also been a member of Unnayan, an NGO working with the low-income communities in East Kolkata for about 2 years. He has constantly pursued sustainability, indigenous urban design and urban conservation, championing the causes in multiple international fora and academia, and keeps inspiring us to do more for our socio-economic continent. He is none other than Professor K.T. Ravindran. I'm still shaking from inside. Hope I could read it properly. I request him to kindly come to stage and share his insights on architect Charles Correa. Please, sir.
So basically, what you see on the screen is how we describe our practice. It comes from the original quote from Chinmayananda, which said, "Voice in action is yoga." I think it was a very substantive quote that he gave. And I taken off from that concept and come to place context in the place of yoga. So it's for you to think through the rest of it. My association with Charles Correa goes back to, active association goes back to 1985. Even though I read an article he wrote in the 60s and I was a student of architecture. And at that time I was a big fan of Louis Mumford. So I was not very impressed by his article. But later, in 1985, when I started teaching in SPA, there was this competition for the IGNCA, first international competition. And I happened to work out the design framework and bring out the brochure for that competition. I think it was India's first proper international competition. And Charles Correa was an advisor and a juror. So that's when I actually began to interact with him. And subsequently, through the years, I've met him in so many different forums. But finally, the most active part is when he was the chair of the Lady Urban Art Commission. He was the first architect chairman. Before that, it was always the retired secretary who became the commission chairman. Correa, they made an exemption in the case of Correa and they made him the chairman for the first architect. And he had organized an exhibition in Delhi. And I happened to curate that exhibition. That time I was a member, before he came as chairman, I was a member of the DUAC, and I curated that exhibition. And subsequently, after he died for over in the DUAC, I had the privilege of sitting on that big chair as his successor, and I continued to interact with him. I also had the opportunity to be in a jury with him in Germany. So we traveled together and spent time in Germany doing the jury work. He and I were the Indian jurors, apart from a group of Germans. Anyway, to cut the story short, I am a very big admirer and fan of Correa for his brilliant mind and his immense design capability.
ये हम लोग का 5th एडिशन है चार्ल्स कोरिया मेमोरियल लेक्चर। चार्ल्स कोरिया साहब हमारे देश में सबसे विख्यात आर्किटेक्ट रहे हैं और उनके निधन के बाद चूँकि हम लोग का भी संपर्क रहा है और कलकत्ते में सिटी सेंटर उन्होंने बनाया, तो हम लोग की इच्छा थी कि उनके स्मृति में हर साल एक ये आयोजन रखें जहाँ पर इम्पोर्टेंट आर्किटेक्ट्स देश विदेश से बुलाएं और उनको यहाँ के जो आर्किटेक्ट्स हैं, स्टूडेंट्स एवं जो प्रैक्टिसिंग आर्किटेक्ट्स हैं, उनको वो अपने काम के बारे में जानकारी देने का एक अवसर दें। तो उसी तरह से ये 5th एडिशन है। 2 साल नहीं कर पाए क्योंकि कोविड की वजह से।